Someone got it.
I have a really lame sense of humor, which is why you see the Q and A. But this is laws and ethics. Who am I? No. Who am we? So, hello, I'm Amanda Brown. I am your treasurer, and I've worked in pen testing and doing vulnerability analysis.
I'm Q. I'm one of your competition architects, specifically for the CTF and IRSec, and I work in incident response and malware analysis. And Amanda very lovingly provided a picture of us, highlighting our most important features.
Made with MS Paint. Yes.
So, a quick disclaimer. We are not lawyers, nor does this count as legal advice. These are quick summaries of the related laws in our own words and with quotes from the laws. Please do not sue us.
Yep. Cool. So, a few of the terms that you should be familiar with are law, which is a rule of conduct or action prescribed or formally recognized as binding or enforced by a controlling authority. This is what the government tells you what you can and can't do.
So, ethics are a principle of conduct governing an individual or group. They are typically personal and are generally not prescribed by a legal authority.
And a policy is sort of an organizational law.
So, criminal law. Criminal law is what the government tells you can and cannot do. It is typically penalties range from fines to imprisonment, though they can vary. Starting off, the most applicable criminal law, though it is partially civil, to our field is the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, also known as the CFAA. After being informed of the movie War Games, Ronald Reagan asked, "Is this possible?" He was informed it is so much worse. Afterwards, Congress watched the movie on the floor. So that's why we have the CFAA. It's from 1986, though it amends laws that are from 1987. Don't ask me how that works. It criminalizes the access of a protected computer without authorization or in excess of authorization. Protected computer, it originally meant any computer with interstate or international commerce or a government or military computer. However, it has been expanded through judicial decisions to mean any machine that processes or stores data with the explicit exception of automatic typewriters, handheld calculators, and other similar devices.
So, basically everything.
Yep. At one point, it was also defined by receiving or putting out energy, which apparently we are all protected computers because we process and store data, and I'm outputting energy right now. So, okay. So exceeds authorized access. If you access a computer within your authorization, so I have permission to use this computer right now for presentation. If I went and started snooping through Ian's emails, that would be in excess of my authorization.
Please don't do that with me.
And so if you use that access to obtain or alter any information that you were not originally entitled to, you are exceeding your authorized access. This comes into play with violations of terms of service. These are classified as access in excess of your authorization. So when you share your Netflix password, yes, it is illegal. And yes, you can technically spend time in prison. However, it is very unlikely that that specific violation will get you sued after Netflix got in a lot of trouble when they pointed that out. The transmission of anything that can be used to the injury of the United States or to the benefit of foreign powers are also explicitly forbidden in the CFAA. So don't go transmitting classified information. It's illegal in more than one way. There are also civil torts provided by the CFAA, which apparently cover medical stuff. The threat to public health or safety, not sure why that's a civil tort. Touching anything that's owned by the US government, or damaging 10 or more protected computers. So if I hack 10 or more of your mines, I violated a civil tort. Civil torts are a violation of civil law, which penalties result in injunctions or fines. They do not result in imprisonment. They're pretty much don't do this or I can sue you sort of stuff, though they can vary as well. Your CFA offenses carry some large variety in your actual prison time. The numbers on the left, not in parentheses, are the initial offense. Any offense after that carries up to the number in parentheses, number of years. So it is very easy to end up with more than 100 years worth of prison time being lined up against you if you commit more than 4 CFA violations. It's recommended that you try not to violate the CFA, but it is very broad and very easily violated. Yes, Jack?
So do I go to jail for 1 year for every password that I traffic?
Yes.
Classic.
However, it's so Jack's question was if you can go to jail for a year for every single password you traffic. That's for the first password. Every password after that technically falls under the multiple violations rule, and you get up to 10 years for each following password.
Wait, so like 1 year for the first one, and then 10 times 9 for the other 10 that I stole?
Yes. So 10 passwords can result into up to 91 years of prison time if you get charged for every single password.
So it's like the opposite of buy one, get one free.
Yeah.
Guys, a couple years ago.
Now keep that in mind that typically people don't traffic in individual passwords. Password lists typically have millions of entries. And think about that when you spread a password list around. So the Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism Act of 2001. The Patriot Act. So there are 2 main portions of the Patriot Act that, as people in the security industry, we need to worry about. Title II and Title V. Title II is about enhanced surveillance procedures. This allows the government to just kind of spy on you as it wishes, as long as there is significant purpose to obtain foreign intelligence information. Originally, that used to be the primary or sole purpose of the surveillance, but that has since been amended by the Freedom Act, which is another crazy long acronym, to be significant purpose. The communications providers are forbidden from disclosing the existence of this surveillance unless they reasonably, which is not defined, believe that imminent harm will occur if they do not. If they do not reasonably believe that this harm will occur, they face sanctions and prison time for telling you that you are being surveilled. Title V is about removing obstacles to investigating terrorism. It's what allows national security letters to be thrown out willy-nilly, pretty much. It expands the use of national security letters under FISA for the FBI. Originally, only the director of the FBI could sign off for a national security letter. After the Patriot Act, any acting director, so anyone, the special agent in charge for each headquarters, can sign off on national security letters, and it led to the widespread use of them. The disclosure of national security letters are prohibited. However, canaries are currently a legal gray area. If, when you first set up your company and your website, you put, as of our creation, we have not received any national security letters, and you watch and that phrase disappears from the website, it's likely they've received a national security letter, but they can't explicitly tell you that. Originally, national security letters had little to no judicial oversight, but they have been amended since then to provide classified congressional reports on the matter because there were some worries that the Supreme Court would overturn their use completely as a result of the lack of oversight. The Patriot Act also amends various other acts to provide access to records and documents without judicial oversight. If you want the full list, I'd recommend checking out Wikipedia. It's got a lot of different sections and acts that are amended by this, more than I can list out on a slide.
Cool. And in combination to federal laws, you also have individual state laws, which are penal laws. So in New York, you have unauthorized use of a computer, computer trespass, computer tampering, unlawful duplication of computer-related material, and criminal possession of computer-related material. I've given short explanations of what these are on the slides, but most of these are kind of vague and the terminology that's being used and the terminology that's being used in the federal laws are also kind of vague. And this is done so that government officials have more flexibility with what they can charge people with, and it can evolve as technology evolves as well. And specifically for these penal laws, the judgments will range from Class A misdemeanors to Class C felonies, which means you could have a year in jail or you could have 15 years in state prison. And typically, if you get charged with one of these, you're going to be charged with others. Pretty bad.
These also, if you're being charged with a penal law for something computer related, you are most likely going to also be charged with multiple counts of violating the CFAA, which they you don't serve it all at the same time. They're served consecutively typically. So if you're being sentenced to 20 years for violations of the CFAA and 15 years for violating New York penal laws, it's not you just do 20 years. You do 35. It adds up instead of just being all at once. So, civil laws. As I stated earlier, civil laws are what you sue each other over typically. Penalties range from injunctions, being ordered by the court to stop what you're doing, to fines. They're also known as torts, and someone who breaks a civil law is known as a tortfeasor. Which, fun fact for the day, did not know that was a word. So, some of the most important civil laws outside of the CFAA are RIT policies, which as RIT students, you need to pay attention to. Some excerpts, which, by the way, you can find this all if you look up the RIT policy manual. It is a very, very large PDF, which covers all the various policies you might run into.
And you have agreed that you will not break these policies. So you should know what you have agreed to.
So you're prohibited from using any means to compromise the security of any system, internal or external to RIT information technology resources, which includes impersonating another user. So this also covers things that aren't RIT related. If you're on RIT's network and you compromise a different company's public resources or private resources, you have also violated RIT's policy because you agreed not to do that. You also need to ensure that any computer, VM, or machine connected to RIT's network has reasonable security. You are required to have antivirus on any machine that's connected to the network, along with multiple other things, such as firewalls and reasonable password policies. You are prohibited from running business or commercial enterprises on RIT resources. They actually take this kind of seriously. Don't run a business off RIT's network. It won't end well. You're also forbidden from causing harm to any individual or resources or doing any illegal activities. This includes piracy. This includes breaking into other companies' databases. This also includes being mean to other people. That's causing harm. Psychological harm also counts. There is a code of conduct that you agreed to, which says that you won't do stuff like that. You also are required to conduct yourself with the highest standards of moral and ethical behavior. It's a bit of a catch-all thing, but pretty much be a good person and you'll be fine. Don't be that guy. The transfer of published copyrighted material such as software and music is not allowed. RIT was the home of the second largest wares group in the world at one point in time until the FBI's Operation Buccaneer shut it down. That was one of many FBI raids at RIT caused by our major. So please don't. There's a reason we have 3 ethics courses. And RIT does not take kindly to piracy. They actually specifically watch for torrents and will inspect the torrents to make sure they are not copyrighted material, because they get hit with DMCA notices and they get charged, and level 3 might stop carrying our ISP as a result. Penalties scale from the sanctioning of your specific user network and computer access, so they might forbid you from ever using the Wi-Fi or touching any RIT computers, which makes it a little hard to do your classwork, to expulsion and legal referral. So attacking RIT infrastructure is explicitly forbidden, and they take that very, very seriously. Doing so is almost guaranteed to get you expelled and referred to legal counsel, because they don't like it when you touch their stuff. This includes attacking air gaps infrastructure or SecLabs infrastructure. If you do not have express written consent, you can and will get in trouble. The express written consent is something that is very large in our entire industry, from pen testing to other areas, from reverse engineering and so on. If you do not have the express consent and permission to do something, don't do it. It's very likely to be illegal. So, GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. This is a sweeping privacy regulation in the EU. Any person within the EU, not EU citizens, are protected under this. It's a general privacy regulation that says you cannot spy on or gather information on people in the EU without their express written consent. And there's a bunch of specific laws about how you can store, handle, and share that data. It has some pretty large penalties. Up to 20 million euros or 4% of your annual global turnover, whichever is higher. Most companies operate with a profit of 8% of their annual turnover. So this can wipe out 50% of a company's profit in 1 year. And the EU has shown that it takes it very seriously. Google and Facebook are currently battling in courts some multi-billion-dollar fines from them. And they have pretty much destroyed smaller companies for violating it. A lot of US companies that do not deal with European citizens have blacklisted the entire EU IP block as a result. And it's currently very contentious because it sort of breaks ad companies' entire business model. Because if you can't siphon data, you can't sell data. And California currently has a similar bill which goes into effect January 1st, 2020.
And now we get to all of the abbreviations. We have HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. This protects the privacy and security of your health information. And it's separated into 2 different rules, which is the privacy and the security rule. The privacy rule establishes standards for the protection of your health information, while the security rule has a set of security standards for protecting the digital health information. This is split into either a civil violation or a criminal penalty. For civil violations, your penalties will range between $100,000 to $50,000 per violation, with an annual maximum ranging from $25,000 to $1.5 million. That's a lot. Criminal penalties. If you knowingly obtain or disclose individually identifiable health information, you have a fine up to $50,000 and imprisonment for up to a year. offenses under false pretenses. Your fines are increased to up to $100,000 and up to 5 years in prison. And offenses with intent to sell, transfer, or use individually identifiable health information, your fines are increased to up to $250,000 and up to 10 years in prison. That's a lot. And HIPAA does require data breach disclosure, just as a general side note. And we had the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, also known as FERPA. This is a federal law protecting the privacy of student education records. It is categorized as 3 different things. So protected information is your educational information, PII, or directory information. Your educational information cannot be disclosed without approval of the student, or if they're under 18, by the parent. So this includes your records, files, and documents. So your transcripts, your GPA, your grades, your social security number, academic and psychological evaluations. PII cannot be disclosed without the approval of the student. This is information that can be used to access education records, and schools are allowed to disclose your directory information. This means that they can disclose your name, your address, your telephone number, your date and place of birth, honors and awards, and dates of attendance without consent. They don't have to ask to reveal this information. In addition, if your school ID number isn't used to access your account in any way, schools can also disclose that. And FERPA does not require data breach notification. Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1998, DMCA. This is used to regulate digital media and protect against copyright infringement. It prohibits circumventing technological protections to access copyrighted works. You have civil and criminal penalties, which are fines up to $1 million and imprisonment for as long as 10 years. They do have a security testing research exemption, which is good faith security research. The researcher must own the computer or have authorization on the computer, must have a safe environment that avoids harm to you as an individual or individuals around you and the public in general. And the information derived from the activity is used to promote the security or safety of devices that are running that program. And as long as your research is falling underneath this good faith security research, you will not violate applicable laws, including the CFAA. And fair use, you have the right to use copyrighted content without the permission of the owner. So this includes news reporting, commentary, research, depending, criticism, scholarship, and teaching.
One caveat on the good faith security research: if it is against the terms of service or end user licensing agreement to do reverse engineering or security research on a product, it will violate the civil section of the CFAA and possibly the criminal section of the CFAA if you reverse it.
Yep.
Now, despite the DMCA giving permission, that just means you won't be charged under the DMCA for that act. You will instead be charged under the CFAA.
Ethics.
Come on, guys, we should know this. We have to take 3 of these courses.
So, Code of ethics.
as given by NIST.
So what people view as ethical varies greatly depending on the culture that you're raised in, your different personal circumstances. So these are just a general code of ethics to follow. We'll read them one at a time. Number 1, thou shalt not use a computer to harm other people.
Number 2, thou shalt not interfere with other people's computer work.
3, thou shalt not snoop around in other people's files.
4, thou shalt not use a computer to steal.
Thou shalt not use a computer to bear false witness.
Thou shalt not use or copy software for which you have not paid.
Thou shalt not use other people's computer resources without authorization or proper compensation.
Thou shalt not appropriate other people's intellectual output.
Thou shalt think about the social consequences of the program you are writing or the system you are designing.
Thou shalt use a computer in ways that show consideration and respect.
What about coveting thy neighbor's computer?
Kind of?
Yeah.
Sure. So the question was, what about coveting other people's computers? Or thy neighbor's computer?
So, in general, just be mindful of what you're doing. In security, we typically have access to a lot of sensitive information depending on what you're doing. And you need to be mindful that the data that you have access to could harm people. You could do a lot of bad stuff. Just be good, please.
It boils down to just don't be a bad person. Don't misuse what you're given access to. Don't go spouting people's search histories that you've discovered during a pen test or while doing incident response. Don't breach other companies without their express written consent. Note written consent. Overall, just don't break the law. So a couple notable people. Aaron Schwartz is someone that you will learn a lot about in cybersecurity policy and law. He was a research fellow at Harvard's Safra Research Lab on institutional corruption and co-founder of Reddit. He founded multiple protest groups and was very active when it came to civil rights. He took particular offense to how JSTOR charged students for material that they charge researchers to publish, and that he believed that this information should be free to access. So he broke into MIT and broke into a unlabeled unlabeled network closet that was unlocked and set up a unlabeled laptop running a script. This script was set up to download all of JSTOR. The script had downloaded or queried and attempted to download over 200,000 papers per hour. This resulted in MIT's entire Class A IP block to be banned from JSTOR, which caused quite a bit of interruption in the library and research sections as students could no longer access papers that they needed. JSTOR and MIT took some offense to this, and MIT and the Secret Service ended up arresting Aaron Schwartz, and he was charged with 2 counts of wire fraud and 11 violations of the CFAA. He faced $11 million in fines and 35 years in prison. He hung himself in January of 2011 before his court date. As a result of this, there is an amendment that is currently stalled in Congress called the Aaron's Law to modify and amend the CFAA to be more reasonable with an account to current computer issues, seeing as you can easily download 1 million passwords in 10 minutes or 100,000 research papers in under an hour. Having charges for each individual item seems to be a little extreme to some. So it's currently unknown if this bill will even be voted on in the near future or if it'll remain stalled, but it exists, and to some it seems to be very common sense amendment to the CFAA. Another well-known person, Marcus Hutchins, also known as Malware Tech. He's a security researcher and malware analyst who temporarily stopped WannaCry. When he was reversing WannaCry, he noticed that it phoned out to a certain URL that was not registered and then just continued on. He wondered what would happen if he registered that URL. So he did, and it turns out that URL was a kill switch, and its existence completely stopped the spread of WannaCry. He was arrested in Las Vegas during DEF CON, not at DEF CON. He was at an after party, for his part in writing and selling code that was used in the banking Trojan Kronos. Now, note, he did not write Kronos. He did not have anything to do with Kronos. He just sold his malware kit that he wrote when he was a teenager for, it was like $1,500, and that was later used to make Kronos. He was indicted on 10 charges related to the writing and disseminating of malware along with wire fraud. He then pled guilty to 2 charges in a plea agreement and faced up to 5 years in prison and up to $250,000 in fines. This case caused a bit of a rift among the security community, as some believe that if you have done any black hat activities, you should receive no mercy, and some who argued that, well, he's done good things since then and he should get lenience. Due to his complete acceptance of all responsibility and his years of service afterwards towards stopping the spread of malware and discovering how it works, the judge took mercy on him and sentenced him to time served plus 1 year of supervised release. If you want more information on this particular case, Krebs on Security has a really good write-up on it, and Googling his name will probably result in a couple hundred news articles. It was a very, very large and popular case at the time.
Cool. So keep in mind that there are a lot of other laws that we didn't go over. If you have anything in question about what you're doing, you need to spend the time to do your own research to make sure that you're not violating any laws. Because like we mentioned, those are only a few of the heavy-hitting ones.
We've literally covered the big names that you will possibly encounter. There are hundreds of thousands of laws in the U.S. legal system, to the point where we actually don't have a full accurate count of them. If you are doing anything security related, you should research and see what you might possibly be violating and what permissions you need in order to do your research. Get written consent from anyone whose systems you are dealing anything with. It is preferred that you do your entire research on a system you own and not let it reach the external internet.
So if you need some kind of legal advice, what type of lawyers should you seek for? Like, is there a cybersecurity lawyer? How would you do that?
Copyright for the most part. Some criminal attorneys, depending on their area of specialty, might be able to help out. You can also possibly reach out. RIT has a student legal assistance, though I'm not sure if they'll be able to give you an accurate read on these specific laws. Plus, your individual state's bar association will have a hotline that you can call for referral to specific lawyers. and they'll be able to help you. It won't be cheap, but however, it's probably worth not spending time in prison.
Thank you, guys.